the teaching system evolved actually here in the United States, his epee. Giorgio Santelli was his best friend, and he was in New York at Sal Santelli. And he said, lawyers, in the United States, you have to coach all three weapons. And he gave him an epee. And it was a primitive epee, a steel guard, and with a kind of a straight blade. Maestro coached with that weapon for about 25 years. And along the way, he developed this cueing system and the rhythmic movement and creating the spontaneity. He didn't tell me to do everything there. Not then. He had told me 10, 20 years before. But he showed me the movement that required me to do one of the correct actions. Sometimes it was a little quick poke to the hand, sometimes it was a long thrust, sometimes it was a flesh, sometimes it was a beat. Hitting the bottom of the foot was our secret. But it's not so easy because it's way out there and way down there. And when you hit that, and if you go like this, you get hit. If you go like this and you go like this and you're gone, then the next action comes up and is ready. So you can hit it and reset to make the touch going forward. You can hit it and make the next touch as a remise of the stop, and then do something forward. It was mix and match. He was like serving salad. You had to pay attention to what was happening next, and if you didn't get it, he just reiterated, and then by the second time you should know. Mm-hmm. So nobody, United States or any place else, taught epee like that. That was him. He created that, and then together we built that up, because each fencer that he taught had to develop a lesson-taking awareness and the abilities to do certain actions. He didn't tell me, he said, well, when I go like this, you go like this. He went like that, and I knew to go like that, or throw one from the side or whatever. But we had practiced that years before, and he was refreshing it for both of us. He would make a cue that wasn't exactly right, so the next time around, perfect. Nobody else taught like that. When he was made the coach of the Olympic team, the epee fencers were so baffled by what he was doing. He was doing stuff like this. And they said, that's not an easy action to hit, because you're going to hit here, but it's changing position, it's changing depth, and if you have to adapt to the correct distance for that was going to be necessary at the moment of the touch. You don't go chasing the will o' the wisp here. You fix the distance so you hit at the distance which will be. So when that's coming in like this, you adjust the distance and adjust the point and hit it when it's in the right distance from you. So then we talked about the distance which will be, not the distance which exists. Mm-hmm. Well, this was a good example of it. Yeah, it was mixed in with a lot of stuff. Yeah. And if he was going to give a lesson to somebody that wasn't as familiar with his coaching, they would watch all this stuff and get, now what? What do I do now? Tell me, coach. Tell me what I do now. And he almost didn't tell me anything, here and there a little bit. He told me with his weapon, with his hand, and to say, if he said too high or too low, that was the whole story. But I knew what he meant, because after a couple hundred lessons, you sort of know. That's one of the secrets, by the way, of training as the fencer and as the coach. Is you develop a language between you. It's not always what somebody else gets. Could be, but you develop a language for the lesson. Maybe it's verbal. He gave very little verbal cueing.
But reinforcement.
Oh yeah. If he said it, he would. If you did something approximately right and it hadn't been right, he would say good. And I knew what good was, and I knew what good wasn't, but he was saying something I did was right. So I said, okay, let's build on that. This is the art of the fencing master. you can have somebody who stands up there and lets you hit them, or tells you what the action will be, and that's necessary because you have to build a repertoire. But you get to this silent talk. The weapon talks, his body talks, his hands talk. It's always a thrill for me to go back and look at it. My God, did I really know how to do that? And I say, yeah, I remember even doing it. The angle is kind of funny because you can't really see the distance. It's compressed in the view. But when he had me go backwards and then make either a beat flesh from a retreat or possibly a riposte, but not too much parry riposte. It was mostly, if I hit the blade, I was so I could hit him. It wasn't to take the blade and stand there. That didn't exist in his game, as you can see. He would find the moment, and by the time the action was being done, you had already corrected all the basic characteristics of the action before you did it. So he would make you be ready for the action he was going to do. So you didn't have to do corrections while you're trying to get the action out. You watch the feet and the balance and so on. It was considered classic to be here. This is like French. This was more Italian, and this was Csiszar. My version. And there's a reason for using the arm. And I'm not sure anybody here is ever going to do it this way, but I would use the arm as a drop hammer. So as I would make the lunge, and I'm not going to show you my long lunge, the foot would go out here, the body would go this way, the hip would get lower. So it was down about knee high. But to drive it, I had to flex the muscles. I would do whoom, whoom. So when I say a drop hammer, people know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. This weight would translate through here to the hip carriage and stretch the certain muscles that had to catch the lunge and reverse it. The muscles would catch the lunge and reverse it. And this was boom, boom, boom. And almost nobody did it. And that's okay. And people thought it was your hand should be here. Well, your hand should be there. My hand goes here. And it doesn't go here. And it doesn't go here. It goes here. So it's in the plane, the vertical plane in which it's going to operate. And it bounced, made my hip bounce. The hip bounce stretched and recontracted the big muscles. And the sequence going backwards is we're going to do it because we're going to do forward walking and backward walking. The recover retreat is just simply to walk backwards, but not just strolling. The movement is to walk backwards. And as I said, there were trends at the time. People fenced like this. They fenced like this. Some people fenced like this. I fenced like this. He taught me to do that. I'm sitting in a chair. You can watch the chair right now. It's just this little projection of the hip. You can see it. Yeah. So being the same as everybody else means that you're going to get beaten like everybody else, and doing something better that they don't know how to cope with or they're unfamiliar with. Okay. There were some lessons that we developed together, very complicated, very difficult. That was something that the two of us just simply created over some time. We got to the national championships in 1960, and he said, I'll give you a warm-up lesson. And we did this lesson that we had created together, which nobody did. It was that elaborate of the movement and the placements and the techniques. It was just, you might say the movement was the rhythm of a flamenco dancer. I just made that metaphor yesterday in another context. But it was quick, and every action finished preparing the next. Everything you finished prepared the next action right away. Don't stop and think, do. You had to know that you had to do something next and get yourself ready for it. So It was like if you make an attack and somebody defends the attack, and now he's going to try to hit you. Well, don't stand there. You go, get in, you get out. He gives you the blade. Actually, here we go again. The guy reaches out with the riposte. He's giving you his blade, or he's giving you his target. Because I was back and ready. Some of the coaches that were watching that warm-up lesson, which was pretty sweaty for the first round of a national championship, they're watching it. What? And the coaches were watching this. We were doing stuff that people weren't doing. It was great. When I went to fence with somebody, it was much easier than what you just saw to do. Going boom, as opposed to boom. And the lesson had to do whatever is called for, whatever he cued, whatever opportunity he gave, or whatever threat he gave. If he moved forward, I was supposed to move backwards. If he moved forward and I moved backwards, and he gave the blade, I had to go right back in. And there were only a couple places in here where that flesh recover counterstep, contrapiede is the phrase. So short distance flesh, get back on guard, ready for the next one, ready for the next one, ready for the next one. There was only a little bit of that in there. It wasn't as much as I recall. But he would give the blade at the damnedest times, at the damnedest distances, and you had to be ready for the next action. Well, that's a heck of a way to go fence, man, being ready for the next action before the opponent is. I make no apology for that. Now, you had a chance to see it with Dave McMahon, with my lesson, and we've talked about it, and the variables and what makes it different. The personality of the coach was different, and what he made me into, so that it became spontaneous and natural. He never coached anybody else exactly the same way. That was me. And because it was years later, it took a little refreshment. We hadn't worked together in a long number of years. He came out of retirement, and I came out of coaching into competing, and we had to do the refresher. That lesson was a long and a refresher. We did some of this, we did some of that. He just went through all the stuff. It wasn't just one lesson, by the way, to get ready for a grudge match. But this is the one that was videoed and illustrates an awful lot of stuff. The more experience you have as a coach, the more you see happening. You see more detail. And when you see in retrospect, I saw the action, and then I saw how it was prepared. A lot of in épée, you don't do the preparations where you look and see and what happens. Your preparation is getting your body and your balance and your distance and your focus, and then you do the action. The action may have a prep as part of it, where you take a blade or you just go. But the recovery creates the moment for the next motion. And it's a very valuable concept for people to remember in lessons, in giving lessons and in taking lessons, but also in competition. The action prepares the next action. And the metaphor I like to use for that, and you may have heard this before, it's kind of like shooting pool. When you're playing shooting straight pool, you sink a ball, and then the cue ball is wherever. But a good pool player, he sinks the ball, and the cue gets in line for the next shot. So I put this one down, and I make it go over here, and now I can make this one go down. I can make the cue ball go over here, get behind this shot, and it's one after the other, one after the other. You keep setting up the next action. So if you hear me shouting as a correction, say, play pool, you know it's not idiotic, but now you know what the metaphor is. Every action should end creating the next one, or at least the opportunity for the next one. So if I want to catch the man giving me the blade, I attack him so he'll riposte or counterattack. And while he's doing that, I've already changed my balance and my potential engagement. So I go boom, boom, and preempt his action because I've gotten ready at the end of the prior action. So the action prepares itself sometimes. The opponent will prepare for you. He will show you what he's going to do a split second before he does it. You have to have the eyes to see and the readiness, so that when he starts to do something, you are ready for it. That's part of the shooting pool metaphor. It's not this. It's a kind of a little inversion of it, but he prepares an action and he does the action, and I stop him from hitting me with the action, which is my intention. But immediately there's a consequence that he has to pay. If you let him dance, sooner or later he hits you. You don't have to try all the time to hit, but you have to be in a situation where if he has a momentary lapse, he pays for it. Because you're ready. You have to be ready right away. Yeah, épée fencers aren't stupid. It's not the artistic thing that some fencers in the other weapons think that is the point, which it isn't. In épée, it's the point that's the point. And there's so many different ways. As you said, I didn't stand there and go peeky pokey. But fencers in the early stages of their training do. And the coach moves and they have to adjust the distance, and the target moves and they have to adjust the aim, and then they have to adjust the aim and the distance because they changed at the same time but differently. The coach has to say, if necessary, you have to move back first and aim your point so that when I'm there you can touch me. And then when you get that going, then they have to extrapolate to another action which is similar but not the same. Huh? You can make a whole game out of it, making an attack that falls short, and when he comes to get you, you nail him. You can win lots of bouts doing just that. But no two times will be the same, but it's the same concept. So the fencer who's going to win bouts has to have a very, very large repertoire of which he uses the least he can get away with. The simplest.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, the simplest that'll work. Mm-hmm. But you have to be able to do things because you don't know which one it's going to be until you have the bout underway or you have planned the bout. When you plan the bout, sometimes it doesn't work out the way you plan it, so you have to be able to go to plan B, plan C. That's okay. But you have to have that in you. So everything has a why. If you don't know that there is a why, you probably can't solve it either. Except by intuitive things that it's kind of hard to make a game out of. Why would I make a stop thrust to the mask? Well, number one, I want the touch. Yeah, that's the main thing. Number two, what else? I want him to be concerned about that. If he's concerned about that, and as he comes into distance and I go, now, he'll hesitate, he'll stiffen, he may pull back his balance a little bit, or he may grab for that blade. So that's knowing the opponent and having figured out what his response is likely to be. You don't want to have four options in the half of a second. You've got to have the next action now. So the idea of pointing it right up here, the more you don't have to hit him. He has to see it coming. That's worth more than hitting, because he's now you've got him going back here like this and pulling his hand back. Any other stupid mistakes are possible for him to make. He won't make. If he's a decent fencer, he won't make more than one a day. But I mean, it's a strategy. You play with the guy's head, and playing with the guy's head is a big part of the game.